Hey there! Is today your first time here? Or maybe your first time in a while? If so, maybe you're wondering exactly who we are and what this church is all about. Well, we'd like you to know that we're a group of ordinary people who are on an amazing journey together, following Christ. Our guide is the Bible because it's the divinely inspired Word of God, and it will never take us in the wrong direction. Along the way, we hope you'll see that we are welcoming and spiritually passionate, and that getting to know you is a big deal to us. We know that the road is rough sometimes, but we'll work really hard to bring you practical and relevant messages to equip and encourage you through life's ups and downs. We want you to know that we care about this community, and we believe that it's our job to make it a better place. So, no matter who you are or where you've been, we're glad you're here with us today, and we hope that you'll join us on our journey, following Christ and living out His plan for us. So, welcome to church.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? It's Pastor Jason here. It's Pathways. Do me a favor. Share this video, tag some people, start a watch party, do all those things that you got to do because we are going to have an amazing time tonight. I'm telling you. So I'm going to give you a few seconds. I'm just going to talk to you for a minute while you are hitting the share button, while you are tagging people, while you getting on the phone with your mom and them and you telling them, listen, jump on. I especially want everybody in the Hampton Roads area. If you are in the city of Hampton, if you're in Newport News, Suffolk, 7 cities, right? It's seven. I'm not from here. 7 cities, all right? So let's make sure that we get everybody on because we have a phenomenal guest tonight that's going to help us kind of talk about some of these things that we've been talking about. We're in our series called Speak Up. And in doing so, we've been talking about how it's important for us to use our voice. You know, God gave it to us. It's important for us to utilize it, number one, to build the kingdom, and number two, to invoke change around us. Don't you know that you got to be involved in your community in order for change to happen? We all know that we need a little bit of change in our life, in our community, in our school system, on our job, wherever it is that you are, we need change. And one of those things that we need to do, first of all, is allow Jesus Christ to help us be the change. That's important. And so with that being said, I want to invite you and welcome you to Pathways tonight, wherever you're watching us from, in your car, in the Corvette. If you got a Corvette, leave the top up because it's getting cold, right? Wherever you are, wherever you're watching, if you're doing hair, if you are cooking breakfast, or you're putting your children in the bed, whatever it is, stop for a minute and come on in, tune in with us, and help me welcome my very good friend. Y'all, I'm excited about this. I'm telling you. I'm so excited about this. I can't even, my jaws won't even go down, right? Help me welcome my good friend, Dr. Richard Mason. What's going on, sir?
Not too much. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, man, thank you so much for coming. I know you are busy, as busy can get, but you have taken the time to come and be with Little Old Revelation Church. And I am excited about it. And so I'm telling y'all, he's here. We're gonna have some conversation. Post your questions because a lot of people, what they don't know is that you are a member of the school board.
Yes.
For Hampton City.
Yes.
All right. So you're a member of the school board. We're gonna talk about navigating COVID with our kids. Navigating COVID with our school. And so I want to give Dr. Mason the opportunity to help share some perspective and maybe shed some light on some of the things that we're doing, or maybe some of the things that we're not doing that can help you guys, that can ultimately help us as a community. So get your friends, get everybody, come on in. It's Pathways, it's Bible study night, but we're doing something a little bit different tonight. So Doc, how are you? How's everything?
I'm doing good. Everything is going great.
Good. Yeah. That's good. So let me just a little bit on how we met.
Okay.
And you correct me if I'm wrong in this. I think we started talking around 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. And I had just went through a traumatic experience, and it was brought to my attention that I needed therapy. It was brought to my attention that I needed counseling. Yes, it was brought to Pastor Jason's attention that he needed counseling. And I come from a neighborhood in a community where what goes on in this house stays in this house, right? And so I was dead set against it. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care what you say. I don't care how you feel. I'm not going to sit down to talk to nobody about nothing. And it was kind of pushed on me. And then my wife kind of gave me an ultimatum. You gonna do this or, And I was like, all right, let me find somebody. And so my pastors at the time, Bishop Gary and Pastor Lisa Rogers, who, by the way, are phenomenal leaders. Shout out to House of God Worship Center for what they're doing. They gave me your information, and they said, reach out to him. He's full of the Holy Ghost, and he is phenomenal. And I was like, But here I am, 5-6 years later, so glad that I made that phone call. So you're a therapist.
Yes.
So tell me about that. Tell me how, I know, but for those who may not know, tell me some of the things that you do, some of the things that you specialize in.
Well, my specialty is working with children and adolescents, but I do family counseling, marital work, couples work as well. But right now, I'm really focused more on trauma and social emotional issues that children face in school.
Got you. Social emotional issues. In this COVID construct, that's got to be big. So what are some of the things that you're encountering with adolescents as it relates to mental health?
Well, to begin with, kids actually deal with a lot of trauma in different ways. And, COVID, I guess people don't really think about what happens at the present time. But when you think about listening to all of the negativity, people dying and catching things and diseases and stuff like that. And, some parents are being very hyper vigilant. Stay away from everybody. Don't touch anybody. Put your gloves on. Put your mask on. Kids are a bit frightened because they truly don't understand everything. They don't understand why they can't go outside and play with their friends.
Right.
And then the mindset is, if I go outside, I could die.
Right.
So kids are trying to really process a lot of this. And unfortunately, based on where they are cognitively, they really don't understand everything there is to know. So we have to be careful just in terms of what we share with our kids, because it can have long-lasting effects on them.
Wow. And so even with this whole COVID thing and trying to navigate that, now we push on children, it's time to go back to school. And, oh, by the way, you're not actually going to school. You're going to go in the living room and sit at this desk. And, I work with a lot of young parents. And I work with a lot of people who have older children who have decided to not physically go to school. They're virtual learning.
Right.
And it was cool talking about it. It was cool coming up with these ideas. It was cool decorating the space where they'll be doing their classwork in. But then all of a sudden, there's depression because they miss their friends.
Right. So
what do we do? What can we do to help them navigate this piece? Because it's new to everybody. So what suggestions do you have to help us deal with that?
Well, it depends on what you're doing in your neighborhood and things of that nature, because some people have small groups, and they allow their kids to work in small groups as far as play groups and things of that nature. Although you don't have the actual physical contact, you can still have those Zoom interactions with each other, with your classmates and stuff like that online. And so we definitely tell folks to get involved with that type of aspect. In a lot of situations when they're in class, teachers will tell the students, send a text message or individual chat to someone while you're in class, just to have that personal touch with one another, because that's what kids miss. You hit on something earlier when we talk about just depression. And a lot of that's because, people are in isolation, and it's not just the children, it's the parents.
Absolutely.
And the reality is, and sometimes parents are thrown just a bit when I remind them of this. Your kid is at school typically from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and you deal with your kid probably from 6 to 9.
Right.
So now you're dealing with your kid all day long. Welcome to the world of your teachers.
Yeah, right. Because they told you little Johnny was bad, and you didn't want to believe them. And now you see little Johnny's tearing the house up from 8 in the morning till 9 at night.
Well, we're not going to say Johnny's bad. Johnny's active.
There we go.
Yeah, Johnny's
yes,
active.
Sir. Johnny's active.
Yes. I don't believe there are any bad children. I think they made bad choices.
Got you.
And so that's my philosophy and how I work with kids and work with parents.
Good.
But one of the things, it's a matter of when you talk about educators have to really sell education to your kids and keep them interested, and keep them motivated throughout the process and all. And so I understand parents they're not used to this,
Right.
and so we definitely try to provide a lot of resources to parents and all. When you look at Hampton City Schools website, go to don't matter which school division you're in, go to the website. Everyone's putting out a lot of great information and a lot of great resources for parents. We understand that this is not your profession. This
Yeah.
is truly not your calling.
Yeah.
But we just need you to be supportive so that we can provide some resources to your kids and continue, the learning process even while they're in this virtual atmosphere.
And that's good. You made the statement, be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
How? How can parents be supportive of the teachers, be supportive of the school board? Because you guys are ultimately making the decisions that the teachers are adhering to, that ultimately we're all living by. How can we support you guys? Is it picking up the phone and saying, hey man, I appreciate you guys? Or is it picking up the phone and saying, open up the schools, please, because Johnny's active? How do we support you? Listen, y'all post your questions too. If you got questions, this is the time to ask, because I'm gonna dig in all of them. But what does support look like from the parent to the teacher, to the school board, to the principals? What can we do?
Well, the biggest thing is making sure we want you to keep your kid on a regular regimen, and then also making sure your child is signed on when they're supposed to be signed on, because they have an actual schedule. Back in the spring, when everyone had to go into this virtual learning, we were all thrown in from colleges and universities through K-12. We were all thrown into the deep end of the pool. So it was a matter of just jumping in and trying to do this thing and figure it out. But now we've had time to think about it. And so schedules have been put into place. Learning modules have been put into place. Resources and those types of things have all been put into place. And so school for kids is just like they should go to school. When they go to school, they get up in the morning, they have certain things they're doing. There are a few schools that are still doing morning announcements and things of that nature, trying to really make this thing, feel very comfortable. This is what we're doing. We're trying to, keep you acclimated to what's happening in school and keep you on a regular schedule. We're telling parents, put your kid in bed at the right time. This is not vacation for them. This is still their academic year. If their bedtime during the school year is 8 o'clock, put them in bed at 8 o'clock, because guess what? They have to be back up in the morning at 7 to start their school day. And while they're in school, parents, if you're able to sit there with them, keep them focused. Help in that process. Stop asking Johnny to go make his bed, to do all of these other things when he's actually in school. If he has a doctor's appointment, make that appointment around the time that you normally would. A lot of cases you wouldn't just pull Johnny out of school to do a lot of these other things that are going on during the day. So keep that in mind. We also as parents have to realize that this is still school. And I think because it's at home, it's a virtual process, it's so easy to lose ourselves in the fact that this is school right now.
Yeah, and I think because ultimately the makeup of it looks different.
Yes.
It's a different perspective on what school typically is. Nobody's going to the schoolhouse per se. Everybody's going maybe to the living room. And so it is a matter of making sure the elements of school still exist. Like you said, the timing, the schedules, making sure you put your children in bed on time, make sure they get the proper rest so they can be up and be focused, and also make sure that they understand this is school.
Yes.
You have to kind of get it out your mind that this is home, that I'm home, that I'm able to do this and that, but you're actually in school. And so applying some of those same rules, like we don't talk while the teacher's talking.
Correct.
We don't move while instruction's going on. And it's a matter of keeping that clear to the student. What about for those of us who are first-time parents of students in school? And I'll throw my hand up because my 5-year-old started kindergarten, and I cried like a baby when I took him to the school, primarily because the school opened, but they wouldn't let me come in. I had to walk him to the door. When I was used to in preschool, I would be able to walk him to his class, watch him for a little bit, making sure he got, acclimated, he got some friends or whatever. Or if somebody hit him, I could be right there to be like, hold on, that's my kid, don't you hit my kid.
Right.
I wasn't able to do that. And so we're not okay. we're not okay. What advice do you have for us? Who, because I got friends, their kids are older. They've done school before. I haven't. What advice do you have for me? Because I think I'm more excited than Carter about school. Every day he comes home, I'm in his book bag. Like, what we got? What can I do? How can I be better with supporting the school systems? And because he's not virtual, he's in class.
Okay.
So what can I do to help him get through this year when I'm not able to be as hands-on as I've heard I can be?
Well, first and foremost, you always want to make sure your kids know that school is definitely important.
Yes, sir.
And if something is important, you have to be present. So when you have parent-teacher conferences, they have different programs and stuff like that during the day, I always encourage parents to go. Right. Be supportive, because kids need that. When you look at programs and things of that nature, kids are typically looking for a mom or dad out in the audience. They want to be seen. They want their parents to smile.
Absolutely.
And so that's a big thing. So wherever you can in terms of going to school is one of the best things you can possibly do. The other part of it is when he comes home, establish a routine. When you come home, grab a snack, change your clothes, whatever you're going to do, so that he gets into the habit of doing these things and then actually doing homework.
Yes, sir.
And you set times and set schedules. When you're dealing with kids at a younger age, because of their attention span, they may not be able to sit as long and finish it all in one, setting. So what you want to do, you want to be able to chunk that lesson and let them do just a little bit here, then maybe take a break and then do a little bit more.
Okay.
And as he grows, you will begin to see just how long he can sit and do his work and stay focused. And so he may start out with just a 10-minute time period. So you do what you can in 10 minutes, let him take a break, then bring him back for another 10 minutes.
It's the breaks. It's the break. And I'm taking notes, by the way, while I'm sharing and writing this. And I think that's important because everybody has advice. Everybody says, oh, you need to do this. Go down to the school. So what, they won't let you in. Go kick the door down. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go to jail behind, trying to be, super dad. So that's important. I want to shift gears for a little bit. Okay. So your wife is an educator as well.
Yes.
She's a principal.
Yes.
Actually. So what does that dynamic look like to have a principal of a high school and a member of the school board in the same household? What's a typical day in the life? Let me not do this. When this virtual thing came out, what was some of the conversation that you and your wife had about how we're going to do this?
Well, keep in mind, we're in two different divisions.
Okay. Okay.
She's not a principal in the same division where I'm a school board member.
Gotcha.
But we talk, quality education all the time, just in terms of different things. Because I do, consulting work, of course, dealing with social emotional learning, helping school divisions establish themselves as a trauma-skilled school division. So she and I share information. We talk about different things in terms of what does that look like. And so when everything was going through this process, the mindset was, how do we keep our children safe? How do we keep our faculty members safe? How do we keep parents safe? And so overall, as a building administrator, that's her responsibility, in terms of those things that she has to do. And we talk about that and being able to keep people comfortable and safe at the same time, because this is very serious.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we look at the number of people dying, from this disease, and we really don't have a handle on this. Someone can go in a hospital, stay for 10 or 15 days, 30 days on a ventilator, come out.
Right.
Have someone who's diagnosed and 2 days later they're dead.
Absolutely.
So we really don't have a handle on what's going on. So you want to make sure that when you bring people back into a building, when you look at, working with your colleagues and stuff like that, you still have to keep them, keep that morale up, keep that energy up, and be supportive. And one of the things she and I talk about is just in ways in which she can continue to be supportive of her faculty members, as she normally would when it's face to face. And that comes into, having these Zoom meetings. And we laugh all the time because we're just zoomed out.
Right, absolutely.
She's downstairs Zooming, I'm upstairs Zooming,
right.
So, and my son who's in school, he's Zooming in his,
Absolutely.
So we're all over the place, And so, and see, I'm not a major techie, when it comes to some of these things, so I'm very fortunate to have, college students that, kind of introduce me to certain things or whatever. Now, some of the teaching modules and things of that nature, I'm good with that stuff, But when it comes to some of the other tech stuff, they have apps for everything.
Absolutely.
And so we're learning a lot, and it's one of those things that we look at now. This is truly the way of the future.
Absolutely.
And so the blessing and curse of this is that I think we've learned how to be able to streamline some things and utilize technology in so many different ways. Because now, when you look at most of your school divisions at this point, most of your school divisions have now provided Chromebooks to all of their students.
Right.
So I think that's a huge asset when you have a kid who may be out sick or on homebound instruction, those types of things. I think now we have a mindset that we can use Zoom as a method of teaching and reaching that student to provide some additional support, that additional help and time, and not just, rely on only the homebound instructor or the parent for that matter.
Sure.
We can work very closely with that student by using, Zoom as a tool.
Right. And I think that's amazing that you brought that up, because we're in unprecedented times across the board.
Yes.
Schools, businesses, churches, all of us are finding our footing as it relates to how we navigate this piece. And so even from the church's perspective, we're finding avenues that have always been there to some degree, but not fully utilized or utilized to their fullest potential. And so now it presents a time where we can dive in headfirst and figure out, hey, how do we utilize this to get the best or the most out of it? Social media, how do we post our announcements so that everybody is informed, because everybody's on social media? How do we get this information and create this in-person experience in an online construct? How do we translate those things? And I think it's important to understand that where we are as a nation, or where we are as far as the educational system, directly aligns with where we are as a church, because we're all utilizing these things and figuring out these tools so that we can make sure the message that we're pushing gets out. And maybe the wrapper is a little different, but the product is still the same.
Right.
And so I think it's important to look at it from that perspective. And I think that's good, man. This is a great conversation. I'm enjoying this. If you're watching us, if you're just coming online, God bless you and thank you for being a part of Pathways tonight. I'm sitting here with my good friend, Dr. Richard Mason, who is a clinical therapist and also a member of the Hampton City School Board. And we're just sharing some conversation about where we are in COVID-19 and how we navigate where we are right now. So if you're just tuning in, welcome. Share this video, tag some people, throw some likes and some hearts up there. That's your electronic amen. I got some scriptures and stuff I'm going to throw out in a minute. We're going to get there, but let's deal with where we are kind of right now. I want to shift a little bit, Dr. Mason, and talk about this therapy piece just a minute.
Okay.
I think that's one of the things that we as a church have not necessarily been open about talking about, but I do believe that we are kind of turning the corner on that. And I talk to more and more pastors now who say, "Hey, man, I'm seeing a guy." And the conversation that I'm having is, "Well, your guy ain't like my guy. My guy's good. My guy's amazing." So as it relates to that, because while the school is dealing with something that they've never dealt with before, pastors are dealing with something that they've never dealt with before. And there are no resources on how to pastor in a pandemic.
Right.
There are no resources. And I was sharing with a friend of mine earlier today that God does everything purposeful. Everything he does is intentional. And it's why this was a surprise to us, this was no surprise to God. And maybe we're in a moment where there are no resources. But if this happens again in our lifetime, then now there are resident experts who are able to share the gems that we picked up along the way walking through this pandemic. Help me. How do I, as a pastor, what are some things that I can do for myself, for my congregation, for anybody who may be watching, that can help us make our way through this? Because while students are dealing with depression, leaders are dealing with depression as well.
Yes.
So help me kind of share that. What can we do? What are some things that help us maintain not only our spiritual health, but our mental, physical health?
Well, the biggest thing is, when you look at, the structure of churches now, a lot of churches started out doing online or virtual types of things,
Sure.
and some people get caught up coming into the building when
Sure.
it comes to church,
Absolutely.
and we have to remind people that it's the people in the church and not the building.
Say that. Can you say that louder for the people in the back?
It's the
Please.
people. The church is the
It's
people
the people.
and not the building.
That's right.
And my church, that's one of the things that we do. We do a lot of small group huddles online.
Yes,
We
sir.
do our Man Up Monday online. The women's ministry, they do a lot of things online. And so we do a number of different things at this point in terms of some of the meetings and establishing those relationships with people.
Yeah.
Because that's really, when you think about the mental health aspect of it, that's really a big part of establishing those relationships and that
Sure.
connectivity.
Sure.
And that's what church is really about, and sharing in the body of Christ
Sure.
at that point. Excuse me, when it comes to, just pastoring, a big part of it is making sure that you are, doing what you need, exercising, getting proper rest, and those types of things, because people are going to be coming at you, whereas, you may have been able to reach out to, quite a few people being in one place,
Right.
at the church.
Right.
Now, guess what? You're going to have to be in various places at this point and doing things, more individualized with your congregation at this point.
Yeah.
And so that's going to stretch you.
Absolutely.
And so my definite advice is always to just rest, know your body. When you're tired, stop.
Stop.
That's it. Because if you run yourself ragged, you're going to be no good to anyone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Stop. If you are running yourself ragged, stop. And we were just talking about this in our discipleship class, that Christ loves the church the way husbands love their wives. And Ephesians says that the wife and the husband are one. They're one body. And a husband loves his body, that he's not going to do any harm to it.
Right.
Which, in context, it would imply that he's submissive to the body. That the husband is listening to his body, saying, "I need to take a break." And so the husband has to be submissive to that part. And so we have to be submissive to that part of our bodies that are saying, "Listen, man, you got to take a break." What about that part of our body who says, "Listen, you need to go talk to somebody"? What about that part of our body that says, "Hey, man, you might need to go speak to somebody, or you're gonna lose it"? Because we said it earlier.
Yes.
A lot of us come from that space
Yeah.
where it's off limits, bro. It's completely off limits for you to go get counseling, because if you do, then you're weak. If you do, then you're just not fit to live. If you go sit down and get counseling, what do we do? How do we navigate that?
Well, first we got to remove the stigma.
Come on.
When we talk about mental health, growing up, my grandmother's sister took nerve pills, and I always remember we would have to go get her nerve pills from time to time.
Okay.
It wasn't until I got into the profession and I went to visit, and of course she's like, "Baby, go grab my nerve pills," that I realized, my aunt's taking Xanax.
Wow.
Wow. You suffer from anxiety,
Yeah.
and we could sit and talk about this, but it's always been that stigma in the Black community,
Sure.
especially,
Sure.
that this is not something that we do.
Sure.
This is not who we are. However, I definitely encourage us to step out. When you find that you're in a place you have nowhere to turn, we have to look at that as an option. Even when we introduce people to Christ, one of the things we talk about in terms of how we introduce people to Christ, and typically people come to Christ when they're in a crisis.
Sure.
Sure. And so when they come in, they see you living well. It's like, hey, try Jesus, and they come in and they still have their bills piled up and all, and they come to church and they're tithing and they're doing all these things, and those bills are continuing to flow in at that time.
Right.
They're still going through their own minor depression, because guess what? No one's talking about what they're dealing with, because when you come into the church, how are you guys doing? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you at home, and you have all of these things going on at home. Little Johnny's acting a fool. Your spouse is doing
active.
some things. Exactly, And so all over the place.
Right.
But no one is really sharing, what's actually happening, being truthful.
Sure.
And so in turn, what we've done, we've taken that new convert and we've given them misguided information, And so being able to bring them to a place where either the pastor, because we have some pastors who, have their degrees in counseling,
Okay.
and they can provide pastoral counseling.
Absolutely.
However, a pastor has to also understand that when there's a difference between something that's scriptural and Bible based, that it's okay to refer, because when you open these things up and you talk about what's going on in your life according to the Bible,
Sure.
now what do? You've opened this wound up.
Sure.
We've gotten to the problem here,
Sure.
but now how do we deal with this problem?
Sure.
And some pastors are not equipped to deal with that.
Absolutely.
Because at some point you really have to look at the mental stability of someone and how do you manage this depression? How do you manage this anxiety? And right now, there are some church members that are dealing with those types of things because church may have been their only outlet.
That's good.
To interact with people,
Yes, sir.
and so this isolation has created some sense of depression.
Sure.
And so I know some churches have been able to make some referrals to talk about these types of things and what you're dealing with,
Sure.
and just really being very transparent with their members and say, hey, listen, it's okay if you need to talk to someone.
Right.
And they're definitely referring folks out. And there are, Christian counseling agencies, that are out there that can provide services from a faith-based perspective.
Sure.
In addition, there are therapists out there that may be working in non-faith-based entities, but they also know the word of Christ.
Sure.
And can bring that element into counseling for us as well.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And let me tell y'all something. I'm careful quite often when I share my story
Mm-hmm.
because I always get choked up about it
Mm-hmm.
because it literally transformed my life.
Mhm.
Coming to get counseling literally saved me.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because you don't necessarily know how much pressure is actually on you until you start dealing with the pressure. When you start looking at the pressure and you feel the weight being lifted off of you. And it's like, man, I'm talking to somebody who does, first of all, is unbiased, who doesn't look at my flaws or the things that I'm sharing from a perspective of, hold on, man, I don't want to touch this. Because you're right. Just because we're pastors doesn't mean, because what I hear you saying is, I may lose some friends on this. What I hear you saying is, everything can't be prayed away.
Yes.
Some things you absolutely have to deal with. And the way that you deal with those things is being open to talking to somebody who can help guide you. Because I think our perspective is, well, the Holy Ghost leads and guides me into all truth. But my discernment is off, because if that's what I'm looking for, then I should be able to identify the Holy Ghost in you. And maybe God has placed you in my life to help me be led and to guide me into truth. So from that perspective, thank you. Because for those of you who don't know, Dr. Mason is my therapist. We have had a great many conversations. Every major milestone in my life, I have sat on his couch and talked to him about it. The birth of all three of my children, me and my wife. I remember, I was sharing this story with a friend of mine earlier. I remember we got married and we had a baby. And I think one of our sessions we came with the baby. And so he was like, oh, this little man, and then a few sessions later we come back with another baby. And it's like, is that the same baby? I'm like, nah. And what we thought we were dealing with at the time, Dr. Mason was like, I thought y'all had problems. And I was like, we do. Well, y'all got a baby, so the problems obviously aren't that big. And what I'm saying thank you for is because you literally helped me shift my perspective on what I was seeing. What I thought I was dealing with, what I thought I was walking through. Though it may have been heavy on me at the time, you gave it to me in a way to where it was easier for me to lift. And once I was able to lift it, then I was able to be free from it. And so I believe that God used you as a delivering mechanism, as a tool to help me walk into my deliverance. What a lot of people don't know is that I was diagnosed with PTSD. because of the tragedy from the shooting that I was on board my ship. And so from coming and talking to you about it, it kind of gave me the tools I needed to help deal with that trauma. You also gave me the tools I needed to help deal with stress. And then you told me to stop and to rest. I think that was some of the most major pieces of advice I had ever received, which what kept me coming back. And I think for about 6 months when I first started, I think I would come and just sit on your couch by myself. And we had some conversation. And so I shared that to say, get rid of this stigma that you don't need to go sit down and talk to somebody, because you do. And even from this point, my wife and I, because you shared another point, that all pastors are not equipped to dive into that mental aspect of what a person may be dealing with. While there is a spiritual aspect to what some people may be dealing with, there's also a mental piece to it. There's also some background stuff that we may not be privy to. And so we have to be careful as leaders to provide a holistic approach to the healing process. And so from that perspective, we have recommended people. We've given your number out a bunch of times. And so my wife and I, what we'll do is that we'll tell people at the start of because we've had people to come and say, can you guys counsel me? Sure. At the start of our counseling session, we'll say, we're not counselors. We're pastors.
Right.
Here's a number to a counselor. Call him. Tell him I told you to call. Schedule an appointment with him. Do some individual counseling, and then do some couples counseling, or whatever. Do some family counseling, or whatever the case may be. What would you tell us as pastors? Should we continue to do that, or should we just be okay with the fact that, hey, God's got it all under control? Is that damaging to people to say, hey man, I don't see a counselor. I just pray about it. How does that benefit? Or is it a benefit? Is it a benefit to take that approach? Or what would you recommend? What do we do? What do we say? What do we do, and what do we say to people where that is concerned?
Well, the thing is, when I see pastors who, they're not trained, they're operating outside of their gifts. And so what that eventually does, it leads to church hurt. And there is no hurt like church hurt, And so I always talk to, when pastors come to me and they talk to me about how can I, be of service to my congregation, because of the relationship that you have with them, you are their shepherd.
Absolutely.
So treat them like an EAP customer or client, should I say. You listen to them because they want to be heard.
Absolutely.
Okay? And once you hear what they're dealing with, then if it's an understanding, something in terms of a principle in the Bible or something like that or whatever, that's your lane.
Right.
But when they come in and they're talking about some other things that are going on in their lives, that's when you say, hey, listen, let me refer you to someone.
Okay.
And you keep them in that lane. If it's finances and they're having issues with budgeting, you refer them to a financial counselor. You don't sit down with them and try to figure out their budget and help them figure out their bills.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not good with it. I have a hard time adding. I'm going to tell you right now, I have a hard time. That's why the Lord gave me, in my marriage, he gave me a numbers runner. My wife can do numbers in her sleep, so I don't worry about that. So you'll never have to come to Pastor Jason for financial counseling. I got people on my team that I see you to.
That's what you need.
Right.
So, and that's what you do. You send them to where they need to be. You make those referrals.
Absolutely.
But then what you do, you follow up. Hey, how's it going?
Right.
Because that still keeps that connection with you as their pastor, saying, hey, I'm concerned. If you send them to a therapist and it doesn't work out, because I tell people, you may not connect well with the first therapist, the second therapist, the third therapist, but there is someone out there for you. You have to shop around to make sure you have someone who's skilled in your area,
Absolutely.
Skilled in your issue, and you connect well with them, And what I mean by connect well, because sometimes people come to therapy and they're challenged. You know my motto. If you don't do your homework, we're not going to continue.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to work any harder at this than you are.
That's right.
Because this is your life.
Yes,
what I'm saying? And you got to get it together.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to go home to my wife
Right.
and I'm going to be happy. So you got to get it together.
Right.
And so you're challenged that way,
Yeah.
you know, and I challenge, you know, my clients to work hard
Yeah.
in this situation. You know, you're not going to come and sit and waste my time and not move,
Yeah.
you know, and that's just kind of who I am as a therapist.
Right.
And I challenge people, but that doesn't work for everyone.
Sure.
You know, and I know there's some folks who come in and then they say, I can't come back. I refer them to someone else.
Okay.
But then they also find out later, I need to stay there. That's
Yeah.
really what I need.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so they come back, you know,
Sure.
but you really have to make sure you find what's going to work for you at that moment in time in terms of what it is that you need,
Sure.
you know. And I get some clients sometimes when they come in and I can see where they are and I'll tell them right away, I'm not what you need right now.
Sure.
You know, because you're not willing to do the work.
Wow.
You're not willing to change. You just want to have a pity party.
Right.
You know, and allow someone to just listen to your story.
Okay.
You know, when you're ready to change this thing, you know,
Right.
you're ready to hit that home run. You know, we're going to do this. You
Right.
know, because I explain to people, you know, you can't get to second base with your foot still on first. You
Come
know,
on.
you got to be able to move that thing, you
Right.
know, and go from there. You know, but you've got to be able to make that change. I can't want it more for you than you want it for yourself.
Wow. And you know that is so important, and I think that is why I'm glad we're having this conversation. I think that's why I'm glad we're having this. I know that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because it works the same way. Pastors should take that same approach. We have to take it. Listen, I can't want Jesus more for you than you want him for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I appreciate about my sessions, my wife and I sessions with you, is that you said, all right, listen, here's the homework.
Mm-hmm.
I want you guys to work on coupling time, which, by the way, is phenomenal. Thanks to your tips on how to do it. And we started that. Now coupling time has become the norm in our house, where, you know, we put our kids to bed, we cut the TV off, and it's us. You know, let's talk. Let's see what's going on. And we've taken a number of your tools and utilized them in our own relationship, so that we could be better. And that way, when we do sit down and talk to people, we're not shooting from the hip.
Right.
We're saying, no, listen, these are some of the things that we did. It worked for us, but you're gonna have to do the work. I'm not saying that you're gonna wake up one day and it's gonna be like this, but you got to do the work. And so it works that way as being Christian as well. You know, you have to do the work, and as long as you are willing to do the work, then the change will come. The change will definitely come. And so I'm glad about that. I got a couple of more things, and then we're gonna be done. I think I got about 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes. And if you got questions, if it's something that you want to ask, do so. We're watching it on live. If that's what you want to do, post your questions. You got questions for Dr. Mason, post the questions. Our media team is going to get us the questions. We're going to answer those questions. And I'm not going to take all of his time, I promise. So put your questions on the screen. If you are liking this conversation, let us know. Do all the stuff that you're supposed to do. Hearts, thumbs up, whatever it is. Let's do that. All right? Dr. Mason, so one of the last things that I want to ask is, we see a lot of things in our time. We've seen a lot of things with social unrest, social injustice. Most recently, the verdict for Breonna Taylor. Before that, George Floyd and Jacob Blake and all of these things. Almost every time you turn around, it is something. One of the things that I encourage our church to do when it gets overwhelming is to disconnect. Take some time and disconnect so that you can keep yourself together. As a professional in the field, what do you recommend when the images that are before us are constantly before us, and to some degree that plays on the psyche of a person? What is your recommendation? How do we cope with it? And what can we do differently?
Well, a big part of it is, as you're watching these things, you know, what's happening, we're getting angry. You know, and anger is a natural emotion, you know, and some people say, oh, you shouldn't get angry. No, Jesus got angry, you know. So it's a natural emotion, but it's what you do with that anger that makes a difference, you know. And so as people talk about what's happened and everything or whatever, you know, Don't go out and riot and tear up your own community, your own neighborhood.
Sure.
Become politically active. You
Sure.
know, go to your city council meetings. Go
Sure.
to the general assembly. You know, and sit down and figure out how do you get your voice heard.
Huh.
You know, how do you connect your community so that you can do some things to hold the people accountable. Get out and vote.
Get out
You know,
and vote.
Register
Speak
someone
up.
else to vote. You know,
Yes.
take somebody to the polls with you, because we have to look at how things are actually done. You know, we have low turnouts in most city, elections for city council, school board,
Sure.
those types of things or whatever. But that's where you are impacted the most.
Sure.
You know, so you definitely need to get out. Come to school board meetings, ask us the tough questions, go to your city council meetings, ask the tough questions, because this is your community.
Sure.
Okay. But then you also have to look at what's happening at the state level, what's happening at the national level.
Right.
We have to get out and vote. We have to make sure our voice is heard.
Right.
When you look at a situation, you may feel like, well, I don't like either candidate. Okay. Well, a no vote is probably a vote for the wrong person. I'll be
Absolutely.
totally honest with
Absolutely.
you. And see, even right now, there are some celebrities saying, hey, we need to have this black agenda. We need to do this. We need to do that or whatever. Withhold your vote. But a no vote
Right.
at this present time
Right.
is not going to do us any good
Absolutely.
to change the climate and the culture that
Absolutely.
we're seeing right now coming out of the White House.
Absolutely.
And we have to be mindful of what happens if we don't vote. And right now we look at the situation with the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
With Justice Ginsburg passing.
Yes. Yes.
Who appoints?
Right.
And who confirms?
Absolutely.
And right now you have a Republican president
Sure.
who's spewing hate every
Sure.
day out of his mouth.
Sure.
And you have a Senate who's just going to support anything he says because he's the president.
Sure.
And so what ends up happening is you allow him to appoint another conservative justice, to the bench, who it's a lifetime appointment.
Sure. Right.
And that happens also with federal courts around the country.
Absolutely.
And so when you have someone who's able to influence the laws and the legal system, that's when you have things like gerrymandering that happens. That's when you have situations where people lose their rights, to
Sure.
vote when they, come out of prison and things
Sure.
of that nature, whatever. And so we have to look at those things and those laws and those decisions that are made and interpreted by those folks,
Yeah.
and make those changes. We have to be able to put people in power.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes a friend of mine asked the other day about jury duty, and
Mhm.
was like, who served jury duty? None of us want to go to jury duty, but guess what? Those are the people who are making the decisions on whether or not to issue a grand jury indictment
Wow.
for the killers of George Floyd, the
Right.
killers of Breonna Taylor.
Right.
You have to understand how that happens.
Absolutely.
When there is a trial, those are the people that are sitting there passing the verdict. And so when you have, people that don't look like us making decisions about what's happening to us, we have to do something about it.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
have to, because even the Bible says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And when we don't have the knowledge of how the system works, then our anger is often misguided. And we get angry at Facebook. We get angry with 9,000 stories that are floating around about what happened and who did this and who said what. And then once we start listening to how the process is and how the decisions were made, now we're like, no, somebody's lying. Well, how much about the system are you familiar with? How much do you know how the jury was able to come to this decision? Do you know why these people were able to just, what it seems like, to just walk away scot-free? It's because, number one, you're right. We're not voting. We're not voting locally. We're not voting. Our voices are not heard nationally.
Right.
Everybody, 2016 was the lowest African American turnout vote in a while, right? And if we don't do something, it's going to be the same.
Right.
Come November 3rd, it's going to be the same. And so we got to get to a place to where we're okay with saying, I don't know, but help me understand. Help me find out. How do I learn this stuff? I was on Facebook a couple of days ago. I was talking to some friends of mine I went to high school with, and there was a statement that was made that was about a Caucasian friend of mine who said, why didn't we learn this stuff in school? why didn't we learn? And from that, it sparked an additional conversation that said, why didn't nobody teach us about credit? That's not a class, you know, in our years of understanding or learning life. It's, you know, reading, writing, math, science, social studies. There we go.
Right.
Now it's like, oh, we're in a world now, and it's like, wait a minute, what's the electoral college? You know, and it's like, wait a minute, you didn't learn this stuff in high school? No, I didn't. When you went through government economics, sir, I play basketball. I didn't learn any of this stuff. You know, and so it's one of those things where we have to take the time to educate ourselves.
Yes.
And for those in our community to share the information that they have. And I think as the minute we have more open forum conversations like this, the minute people start coming to the school board meetings, they start going to their community meetings and asking those questions, the tough questions, then we will be able to fully understand how the process works and what we really need to do to make change for the better, not just for us, but for our children. And so with that, Dr. Mason, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Time is over with, and I am so sad about it. That hour went by quick, didn't it? Gosh, it went by fast. Dr. Mason, before I let you go, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
My office is Monarch Clinical and Consulting Services, 10C West Queensway, downtown Hampton, and you can give us a call at 757-846-5205.
Call the number. As a matter of fact, you can go back and watch this video. You can get that information again. If you don't get it, inbox me. I'll share it with you. You can get his information. I recommend, highly recommend that you go sit down. And not just him. He has a vast array of colleagues that are equally as good as he is. And I'm telling you, I think we've been with you through two offices. The one that was over here somewhere, and then the new one. And so it's very homey, it's very comfortable. You let your guards down when you go in there. It's low lit. I think it's a candle or two. It's amazing. You go in, you sit down. There's like Jolly Ranchers on the table. Get you one, open up, have a conversation. I think Dr. Mason learned more about me than I think my wife did initially, because he just made me so comfortable with talking to him. I just, you know, and it wasn't one of those things where I was like, it all started when I was 3. It wasn't that. It wasn't that. It was very, very unscripted, very open, and I appreciate that to be able to come and just share some of those things with you. So thank you so much for taking your time to be with us tonight. Was that good? Man, that was dope, right? That was so good. Listen, do me a favor, man. Share this video. It'll be available on YouTube a little later on. I'm going to share it again. We can start a watch party just so you can hear some of the things that Dr. Mason mentioned, some of the suggestions that he had. Take them on board. And remember, you have to utilize your voice to speak up. God is getting ready to do something great in the earth. And guess what? He's going to use your mouth to do it. He's going to use your mouth to make the announcement. And so you got to be okay with speaking up. November 3rd is coming up. If you don't have, if you're not registered to vote, get online. Make sure you're registered to vote. If you need help being registered to vote, contact us. We will help you. I am doing an absentee ballot because I'm a legal resident of the state of Alabama because I'm in the military. I got my ballot in the mail. I'm excited about it. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to go up there. They sent me like a little sticker, you voted sticker to go with it. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do it right, put it back in the mail, send it off. Do that. Let your voice be heard. Do not complain.
That's right.
When all this is over about who is what, when you had the opportunity to speak up and you chose not to. We can go throughout the scripture and I can show you a million times where people had the opportunity to make change and they didn't. So don't be that guy. Don't be that person. Dr. Mason, thank you so much. This has been enlightening, phenomenal. I am appreciative to you, sir, for carving out some time in your schedule just to be a part of Pathways Tonight with Revelation Church. All right? We love you guys, man. Hey, we're getting up out of here. If you got prayer requests, if you got anything else that you need, inbox us, let us know. Tell us what you thought about this session tonight. We still involved in Speak Up. This Sunday, just some quick church announcements. This Sunday, We have moved our service back to 11 o'clock. So service will start at 11 o'clock a.m. this Sunday, right here in the parking lot, 1932 Coliseum Drive. Pull up. We are still making sure that we adhere to the social distancing guidelines. We're still following the guidelines of the CDC. You do not have to get out of your car if you don't want to. Now, there are people who get out their car and they run around their car and they get right back in their car. Do whatever it is that you got to do, because we have a good time right here on the parking lot. So pull up, man. 11 o'clock Sunday morning. It's going to be phenomenal. The Lord gave me a word today. I'm excited to share it with you, but I need you to be here so that you can be a part of it. If not, it'll be online. You can stream it. That's if you're not local. If you're local, pull on up. You ain't doing nothing. You ain't going nowhere. Get out the bed, put your clothes on, get back in the habit of coming to church. Pull up on us in the parking lot. And we will be so excited to share the Lord with you and to just love on you from a distance, from a 6-foot distance. All right? God bless you. Thank you so much. I think that's all of my announcements. Oh, giving. If the Lord has laid on your heart to give, please do so. Our Cash App is posted. It is $Rev Church VA. Be obedient to what the Lord says. You know, we don't ever say we need you to give this much. I always tell you guys that if the Lord laid it on your heart, be obedient to what God says, because there's always a blessing on the other side of obedience. Now, don't do it because Pastor Jason said it. Do it because you're being obedient to the voice of the Lord. All right? We got to go. I love you guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you all again real soon. Dr. Mason, it's my guy. It's my guy. It's my guy. All right? God bless you, man. We'll see you again, and I'll see you all on Sunday. Good night.